We are live on the 10 on the Bet Rivers Network. I'm your host, Greg Waddell, joined today by one of my favorites, Doug Kezirian. Doug, great week for you betting last week. I believe 5-1 on the card with picks we gave out on the show last week. My friend, are you rolling in the dough right now?
Yeah, I know. It is nice. Anytime you can bet against Clay Helton, that's a win. So I enjoy doing that as a USC football fan and all the pain from over the years. And sometimes in college football, as you know, Greg, you can't be afraid to lay wood. And we did that with Indiana. We did it with USC, like I said, against Clay Helton. And then, you got to grab some sneaky dogs there, whether it's Boston College or something else. So a little bit of everything. And that's the beauty of college football. And honestly, that's why I prefer it over the NFL. I like both. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy the NFL. But it's just a painful exercise in the fourth quarter. Whereas in college football, you have the full tool belt, right? You got to get these huge spreads, these monster like Troy plus 33.5, and they get the cover against Clemson, right? And then you get these pick'ems. Like, and I know your best bet was Illinois, and you got there eventually in the second half. So it's really just a fun sport that you have so many different matchups, and obviously the point spread being the great equalizer.
And in this beautiful conference, the Big Ten, so many games to choose from. 18 teams. It's early in the season still. We're still learning who many of these teams are. But I feel like we're starting to get a good sense of it. A 3-1 in 1 week for me, 5-1 for Doug. Hopefully we can continue leading all of you at home to some wins as well as we give you our Big Ten picks throughout the season. Reminder, we do the show twice a week. So this is our week 3 preview, first show of the week. We'll go through as many of these games as we can. Anything we miss, we'll get back to on our second episode of this show later this week, and we'll unveil our full cards on episode 2. But this will be an early midweek preview, some of our first impressions of all of these games. We'll get to them in just a moment. But first, I do want to make sure all of our viewers are aware of some awesome promotions that we have for you at Bet Rivers. First of all, our football squares. Players who place a qualifying same-game parlay of at least $10 on eligible NFL or NCAA football games will receive one standard entry into the weekly squares game. Winning standard squares will be awarded a prize of a $20 bonus bet. See app and website for more details. We've also got our college football weekly profit boost pack. Log into your Bet Rivers app or your BetRivers.com account each week to opt in to a 3-pack of NCAA football profit boosts, including a live boost, a same-game parlay boost, and a boost that you can use however you please. Once again, see the app or the website for more details. Doug, we're going to get right into it as we start to preview week 3, beginning with Indiana and Indiana State. It's not the sexiest name on the card, but it's the earliest game of the week, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Friday night. Indiana, massive favorites, as you would expect, 48.5-point favorites. Total at 59.5. Any early impressions here?
Good to see Kurt Zignetti back because he did not cover week 1. Very out of character on that one, but then couldn't help himself from scoring. And he had the Mendoza brothers partnering up for plenty of touchdowns, 5 passing touchdowns. And a similar matchup this week, but I just think the situational spot, we talk about spot handicapping, and last week was much more favorable for laying the lumber because you had off a game that was a little closer than you would have imagined and a team that wanted to get back on track. Well, now you sort of have worlds colliding. You have, like you said, Spotlight, Friday, all the attention in the world in terms of being somewhat national television, Big Ten Network, and an island game. And you definitely in Bloomington, you want to open up a can and do things the right way. But they have Illinois on deck, and they got back on track, quote unquote. So there's a good vibe in the locker room and in practice all week. It's just a big number, man. I mean, last week they were laying 35.5, much different than 48.5. So not that Illinois State's any good, or Indiana State, excuse me, is any good, but I just am a little gun shy. The problem is, will the Sycamores score? I mean, I don't think they necessarily will. Maybe a touchdown in the second half. Obviously, the fourth quarter would be the most logical. I just wonder if Indiana just scores too quickly and can't help themselves. So I'm not taking the points, but I just can't quite lay them here.
I totally agree with your instincts that this is a dangerous spot. As you mentioned, we're at the point in the season where you look ahead a little bit to the first conference game. Many of these teams playing their final non-conference opponent of the year. Indiana's got a primetime home night game against Illinois waiting for them 1 week after this spot. They're rolling. They're feeling good right now. Indiana State, I don't expect much success from them either. But as far as the cupcakes go, even like a non-power conference opponent, right? Indiana State is 2-0 with an offense that has scored at least 38 points in both of their games. So you would think this is sort of that team's Super Bowl versus another team on short rest on a Friday night game that just maybe wants to stay healthy and make sure they get to Illinois in one piece. It's a total stay away from me at this point in the week, barring any noteworthy shifts before
What
we
about
get
the
closer.
over? Any interest in the over, maybe?
I think Indiana State has the offensive weapons that could get you 1 to 2 scores and push a game like this over. We know that Indiana is going to be around 49 to even 56 points in this game. The question is, do you get anything from Indiana State? But like I said, they've shown through 2 games, they're a team that wants to score points. They want games in the 30s or even upwards. They're not going to want that against Indiana, but I don't know. The Indiana defense was vulnerable back in week 1. They trailed early in that game. So you're right. I think maybe the gut could say lean the over, but I'm going to want to research that a little closer before we officially add that to our cards later in the week. Let's move over to game 2 here. UCLA and New Mexico. UCLA laying 15.5 points. This is a Bruin team that we've talked about at length over in your neck of the woods, Doug. Our total is 52. What's your early impression here?
Well, you asked me the preseason show with all these teams we were raving about that could break through. Nebraska, maybe Michigan State was poised for a big spike in wins. And we did my favorite win total, and it was UCLA under 5.5. And you said, that's a great point. All these teams we like to shine. Someone's got to be on the losing end of things. And I do think the Bruins are a mess right now. However, New Mexico might be just what the doctor ordered. This is not a good team. And the Bruins had shown some life a little bit against Utah in the second half, but more so against UNLV in the second half. Now, I wasn't watching at that time, but I do a sharp better, a pro better that I'm really good friends with. He was texting me. He's like, oh, UNLV's getting all the calls or one of these. And I know he had the Bruins, but I do think they might have figured out some stuff, and maybe they just weren't ready for Utah's physicality. That Utah score may not be that embarrassing by the end of the year, right? If the Utes are as good as they certainly looked, and even Dampier getting some buzz for Heisman. And then the Rebels are not like a great team, but they're good. I mean, they could compete here and maybe even win the Mountain West. So losing at UNLV by 7, especially dominating the second half, not the worst look. This is not the Rebels of 10, 15 years ago when they can only win 2 games. So I think this spreads on the cheap. I think it's a buy low spot for UCLA. I do like the Bruins here. I'm laying the 15.5 with UCLA at home.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. This is your first Bruin positive shout of the year. And I think it's going to be enough to talk me off my first quick instinct, because my gut off just a quick look at this game was that I was going to love the other side of it for all the reasons we've laid out.
I'm all ears though. If is New Mexico competent? I guess that's my question.
I don't think so. But the one thing I would just point to, the reason I like New Mexico just at first glance here, I actually thought there was some substance to their performance in the big house against Michigan. Now, Michigan against Oklahoma did not inspire confidence whatsoever. There are more issues with that team than we think. So, maybe keeping it within 17 points against the Wolverines is not as impressive as we might have thought back in week 1. However, they scored on some trick plays in that game. They kind of approached that game as if they had a plan to compete, more so than just, hey, this is cool. Let's get out of here and make sure we have a little bit of morale. Like, I think they thought they could win the football game. And I think they've got a coach that is competitive and approaches games against Power 5 opponents in that way. UCLA is a gettable Power 5 opponent, as UNLV showed. And I think New Mexico's quarterback can make enough plays. He held up nicely against some pressure from Michigan in that game and kind of created plays on the run a little bit to extend plays. So I don't think he's going to face nearly the amount of pressure that he faced against Michigan against UCLA. But again, I don't feel super strongly. I would call this just a lean at first glance more than anything. And to your point here, UCLA, even if they're a team you want to fade, even if if there's not much nice you can say about them right now. Spoiler alert, audience at home. No team goes 0-12 against the spread this year. So at some point, there's got to be a time to buy the dip on UCLA. This may be a good spot to do so before we turn the page to conference play. Did anything I say give you a little more pause there, or are you still leaning just as strongly as you were, Doug?
Maybe the over is the play more than anything, because I think UCLA can get the chunk plays, and they're just not a 3 yards in a cloud of dust team. I do think you can have big playability. And they had the big plays in the second half, things like that. And then I think Mullen brought in the oars and just tried to play clock more than anything. So maybe if New Mexico can actually matriculate, I just think UCLA is going to have some big plays on offense. So maybe it is a 35-20 kind of game, right around the number, but get you over the total. I do think the Bruins want to get Nico kind of feeling himself right. I think the defense is not their concern right now, even though, I mean, look, they got pounded by Utah, but some of that was short fields, going for it on fourth down and being unsuccessful. I think their path to competency this year is getting Nico feeling better about things. And I think that's going to open up the playbook and, just being at home and things like that. Like, they've had a tough start to the season. Playing Utah fired up off the offseason and then going to the UNLV and facing, a competent UNLV team, especially with Orji not playing and having all the reps go to their regular QB, I think this is a get right spot. But if you like the Lobos to put up a little points, I think we could see some fireworks.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. I definitely lean to the over in this game as well. So I may stay away from the spread. I think you've talked me off of the Lobos, but that over is looking tasty. Okay, moving on. Oregon has looked, I don't know, unhuman so far through 2 weeks. That this is a team that possibly could win a national championship. Dante Moore, new quarterback. It's not the star running back they thought they were getting with Malachi Hughes. It's been more by committee, but God, they've got so much talent. Decorian Moore, the freshman, has been stellar as a receiver early in the season as well. They're going away from the West Coast for the first time this year into Evanston against a Northwestern team that has had their fair share of ugly performances thus far as well. The Ducks on the road laying 28 points, our total at 48.5. I do have a play on this game, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts first.
Got to be careful overreacting what you last saw, right? We've seen the Ducks score 59 and then 69, and we saw it coming. The way Dan Lanning was talking about what Mike Gundy said and things like that. You had a inkling that he was going to open up a can and then some and set the record straight. Now, it's not necessarily a look ahead spot, although they do have the Civil War next. Oregon State's not that great. I think the road component, like you mentioned, first time and all that, I think it's going to be interesting to see how they play an inferior opponent on the road, a little on the early side, right? So 11 a.m. by West Coast standards. You mentioned Dante Moore. I've never been his biggest fan. I thought he looked pretty disjointed whenever he got in at UCLA, but obviously different weapons. Off season, you're allowed to get better, coaching, all that stuff. I would lay it before I took it, just because I don't think Northwestern can do a whole lot in this game. But if they bleed clock and stuff, maybe there's just not enough possessions. And I'm not convinced Northwestern's going to score. I mean, they only put up 3 points on the road against Tulane. Yeah, Western Illinois, they got some offense going. I feel like the under is the play if I had to play something.
Doug, have I ever told you I love you? Because you got exactly to where my finish line is right now. I love the under in this game. Just a couple notes that I would add here. Dante Moore, you mentioned his 1 year where he was given starting quarterback reps back at UCLA a couple seasons ago. Really struggled on the road. 29 of 68 passing in 2 very ugly losses when he was a starting quarterback on the road that year against Utah and Oregon State. Now, both those teams were pretty good. That was back when Jonathan Smith was still at Oregon State, and Utah was very good that season. I think Northwestern's defense will provide more openings and less resistance. However, you talked about the spot. This is their first trip east. They've got a rivalry game back in Oregon against Oregon State next week. You would forgive them for looking ahead. They have been so good, 64 points a game in 2 weeks for Oregon. I don't think they're going to have the sense of urgency to go hang 50 points on Northwestern. I just think they want to escape with a win without any funny business. Now, Northwestern is not the same Pat Fitzgerald program that it used to be. But I do think in spots like this, they've been a favorable side to be on as a large underdog. They just are able to kind of slow the game down, play a game of field position. It's sort of what this program founded itself on. And going back really through their last 5 games in Big Ten play, where they've been opponents or 20-point or more underdogs against their opponent in Big Ten play, they've covered 4 of 5. Those games have been ugly. They've been closer than you expect. So I thought about taking Northwestern plus the points here, but I do really strongly believe Northwestern may not score. Cam Porter, their workhorse running back, is out for the season, and I think that's a pretty emotionally devastating injury for them. They wanted to lean on him heavily this season. This could be a 35-0 blowout Oregon win, but I do think it's a game where I pretty strongly lean to the under on, given the injury situation for Porter, the Northwestern running back, and just the spot for Oregon, expecting maybe motivationally bit of a step backwards from a team that has impressed through 2 weeks. All right, we're going to move on here back to, I think, the game of the week in the Big Ten Conference. It is Wisconsin and Alabama. The Badgers on the road here. The Tide with a huge bounce back last week. They are 3-touchdown favorites, but you get the hook, minus 20.5. Our total at 46.5. What do you think here, Doug?
So can I tell you 5 minutes into the game? Because it's all going to depend on what the trenches look like, because that was obviously glaring in the loss to Florida State. And I think it's a really favorable spot to back the Tide. They're got a bye next week and then Georgia on deck, right? And so this is a game to sort of catapult them into this sort of second chance at the season, and conference play obviously hasn't begun. So the FSU game, it's not the end of the world, and they get some latitude with the expanded playoff and the fact they're an SEC team. I think it's a really tough ask for Wisconsin to go in to Bryant-Denny and hang with the Tide. Now it's a day game. We've talked about all that, but still it's a little much to go there. I've been there a few times for work when I was at ESPN, and it's pretty different place. I've been to Death Valley. That's different as well. I love Camp Randall. I've been there. I've been there when they took down number 1 Ohio State many years ago. But this is a little different. Now, if Wisconsin's can control the trenches enough and move the sticks, bleed this clock, shorten the game, then I think 20.5 is too big of a number. But my instinct is Alabama does enough, 34-10 kind of game. That's my early read on this one, because I do think it's just going to be a lot to ask. But I like the Badgers. I think they're well coached. If they can run and just, again, move the sticks, do all that, the over-under feels a touch high. Mm-hmm. But if Whiskey can't do anything and it's punt city and against these Alabama recruits, because after all, Florida State might be just good, right? Like that quarterback talk the talk. They might be kind of back, maybe not back as a national championship contender, but maybe they're not. It's not like losing to a 2-loss team or whatever, like we thought maybe at the beginning of the season. So maybe Florida State's pretty good, and Alabama, the spot favors them. And like you said, it's under 21 with that 20.5 hook. So I'd kind of lay it before I took it, but it's a pass.
Totally agree with you on your assessment of the Seminoles. I think we all freaked out with just the fashion of that emphatic win over Alabama week 1, when in reality, Florida State looks like a national championship contender right now. It may not be as much of an indictment on Alabama as we once expected. Now, I also think if you were going to capitalize on the spot value of the overreaction to Alabama, it was last week being the perfect time to do it. This game, to me, I'm with you. If you're catching it under 21, that's a key number, right? Just Alabama win by 3 touchdowns, 3 extra points. I think that's a favorable number to take the Tide. There's just too much up in the air for me. Billy Edwards, the Wisconsin starting quarterback, we don't know if he's going to play. He sprained his knee back in the season opener here. And I will say Wisconsin's being pretty tight-lipped about this. They're not really saying anything about it. That could mean that he's out for 2 months, and they don't want to say that. That could also mean that they're going to bring him back against Alabama. They don't want anyone to know it. I liked your idea here at first. Maybe let's watch a drive. This might be a live betting opportunity for me. Let me see who's under center for Wisconsin, and we've seen a spread move noticeably. If Wisconsin goes 3-and-out immediately and Alabama starts, inside the 50, it's not going to be the number we want, but I might not care at that point. If Billy Edwards is out of this game, I think Alabama should roll by 28 plus, and that might be my opportune time to jump on the Tide. Next on the list here, we've got Michigan against Central Michigan, an in-state rivalry of sorts, if you want to call it that. Last we saw these two programs together, Connor Stallions was on the Central Michigan sideline trying to assist Michigan's spy operation against their other in-state rival, Michigan State. Times have changed. Michigan's no longer winning national championships. Instead, the Sharon Moore era is off to a clunky start. No Sharon Moore, by the way, Michigan's head coach, suspended for this game. But the Wolverines are laying 27.5 in the Big House. 42.5 is our total. What are your thoughts?
Wish they were facing a worse team with a bigger spread, and then I would be all over the dog. I think the number's right, but I think it's a little high. I think this lands one of these 24 or 23-point wins. Central Michigan, not good. They're middle of the pack in the MAC, and I just think maybe they're just the right team for the Wolverines to feel themselves a little bit offensively, but they're not bad enough where it's going to be an easy route. And the Wolverines, like you mentioned, no Sharon Moore. They go to Lincoln next. So it's a big like stretch here for the Wolverines, right? The performance against New Mexico, we didn't know what to expect. Obviously, freshman quarterback, Oklahoma on deck. That all happens. That kind of stuff happens in the first game. Like teams can start slowly. That's fine. But this stretch here where they got Big Ten play starting next week, Central Michigan's supposed to be a formality. And this is the case often. And this is why I was actually on Troy last week against Clemson. When teams put a lot into a game and lose, and then they have like a cupcake the next week, they don't just like, oh, let's take it to them. Like it's kind of a hangover effect, right? They know they're going to win the next game, and they just want to get that over with and let their body still recover from the loss, the emotionally drained loss that they have. And I wonder if that's the situation here for the Wolverines. And let's face it, they may not have an experienced coach during the game, some decisions, some conservative, right? Like they're not going to be firing on all cylinders. I like Underwood, but there's some growing pains here. I lean to the Chippewas. I just wish it was a worse team and I was catching like 40. But I think Central Michigan could offer resistance. Like I wouldn't be shocked if this is a 3-point game at half or something along those lines, or 7 or 10. So it's a strong lean to Central Michigan. I just wish it was a different situation. Then it'd be like a banger.
Yep. It's a lean for me towards the Chippewas, and it may become an official play by the time our second episode of the show comes out later this week. For now, it's just a lean. And Matt Drinkle is the new coach for Central Michigan, by the way. Now, I loved what I saw from him when they took down San Jose State, a team that a lot of people had high hopes for at the non-Power 5 level this year in week 1. That was a road game, by the way. Went all the way across the country to California, escaped with a 16-14 victory. Now, I watched that entire game, and I didn't know this coming in, but Drinkle's a service academy guy. He served in various offensive advisor positions with Army through the years before taking the Central Michigan head coaching job. And he's running this offense similarly to a service academy offense. I mean, they want to run the ball 80% of the time. And when they throw the ball, there's a lot of misdirection and you think they're running it. They've got 2 different quarterbacks that they'll employ and throw 3 to 5 times a game, and that's it. Now, the issue for me is this. I don't know if the whole service academy style of football is how you hang with Michigan. I think you could almost argue a Michigan team with a lot of new faces. You just can't go try to run through the teeth of that defense. If you play field position, I think Michigan's size, speed, talent advantages are going to win out here. So it's one of those things. I see the argument that number one, good football coach, team that's up for the challenge, going to get up for this one, and a pesky style of football could pose problems, especially, do you want to prepare for a service academy offense without your head coach in that game? It's the last thing I would want to enter. But ultimately, I just keep reminding myself, Michigan's got 5 stars all over the field on defense, and I don't think Central Michigan will score, even if they annoy Michigan quite a bit in this game. It's a lean to the chips. We'll see if I move it strongly onto the card before our second episode later this week. 2 more games I want to get to this episode. Let's talk Ohio State in the state against Ohio here. This one's in the shoe. The Buckeyes 31.5-point favorites. 52 is our total. It was a snooze fest for the Buckeyes in week 2. Just a very comfortable roll, wire-to-wire type victory, but still a lot of new faces getting their feet underneath them for the Buckeyes right now. Doug, what do you like here?
Line looks short. It looks short. Now, I'm not just reacting to the 70-0 thumping of Grambling, but this team, I think, wants to get their quarterback as ready for conference play as possible. Their next game is at Washington. Not an easy place to play, but they also have a bye. So I think you get Julian Sands really ramped up, maybe even the first half, and they really put the pedal to the metal. And then he's going to be that much better going into 2 weeks of practice before facing the Huskies on the road. I know Ohio's one of the better teams in the MAC, so maybe it's an overplay because Ohio State's offense can seemingly just put up some points. Texas is good. Like, let's not, dismiss so much 14-7 final. I mean, Archie Manning missed a lot of throws. If he hits some guys in stride that are wide open, underneath, that game might have been 28-21, something like that, but it just ended up being a snoozer at 14-0 and teams working out the kinks. I feel like the over-under's low, and I feel the side is short. I can see 47, 49 kind of thing for Ohio State, and maybe even 10, 20, something like maybe it's like a 50, 40, 49, 10 game, something like that. The Buckeyes could put up some serious points, but there is a way where the Bobcats actually do okay on offense because I think they do have that capability. I just don't know if there's just a big enough talent gap that they can't do anything. But look, they had some fluke scores against Rutgers. Last week was supposed to be a higher scoring game against West Virginia. This Ohio team can move the ball. So I'm looking at the over there.
Yeah, they've got a playmaker and a veteran quarterback that I like in Parker Navarro. He's a dual threat guy. He's actually the leading rusher on Ohio, and he's one of the reasons people like this team to win a lot of games in the MAC this season. I've got a bit of an unorthodox angle to this game that I'm going to approach, but it all comes down to what this spot is, I think, for Ohio State. Think about, Julian Sayin, a brand new quarterback, a lot of young faces, new running backs on this team that are getting opportunities for the first time. This is kind of a strange rollout to the season that they've had. They had the game of the season on opening day against Texas, and they get this huge emotional victory. They follow that up in week 2 against a team that their own head coach, Ryan Day, was like, listen, we all know what's going to happen. We just want to get out of here with respect for the game and keep everyone healthy. It wasn't even a serious football game. If Ohio State wanted to, they could have won that week 2 game 130-0. But their first string got basically 2 drives, and they still rolled to a 70-point victory. It's a weird spot for me mentally because Ohio is not a bad football team. They're a team that will show up and at least compete. Now, at the same time, if Ohio State wants to play their first string 60 minutes, I have a hard time believing that Ohio State does not emerge with a 40-ish point victory. I think the line is rather favorable to Ohio State as long as they play their dogs for most of this game. I would tend to think that a week before going to Washington, Ryan Day will want to get his young team 4 quarters of reps. I think you want to prepare these guys mentally for the first game against a team you should beat to have to actually sustain 4 good quarters. With that said, I could see there being a weird start to this game for an Ohio State team that may just feel like this is a cupcake. Guess what? This isn't Grambling State. This is an offense that knows what they're doing that's going to be one of the better non-Power 5 offenses in the sport this year. I actually like to look for Ohio first quarter lines in this game. Nothing crazy with it, but if we can catch a big number, something around 10 maybe for the first quarter, I would keep an eye on Ohio, anything over a full touchdown. I expect Ohio State to roll late and keep their first string late into the game, but I'll finalize that play before our second episode, and we can talk about it more later this week. One more game, Doug, for us. It's Illinois against Western Michigan here. The Illini were one of my favorite plays last week. I was fortunate that Duke played a very sloppy brand of football. Western Michigan on the road in Champaign. Illinois minus 27.5. Our total at 50.5. What do you think?
I mean, these are some tricky handicaps. I mean, that's the beauty of the betting, right? I mentioned earlier that all the tools in the tool belt, but it's a really tricky spot just given the emotional game that they just played to win at Duke. I mean, I know they have high aspirations, and this was a big sort of, I don't want to say pivot point of the season, but a big one for their long-term sort of prognostication in terms of a playoff appearance if they don't win the Big Ten or whatever. So again, you mentioned this with that Indiana. They're at Indiana next week. So it's a big game with IU and Illinois next week. And I don't know. I don't think much of this Western Michigan team. They're sort of middle bottom of the half of the conference in the MAC. I lean to the Illini, but this to me is going to tell us a lot. This is professional maturity, right? This game is really Illinois can handle them if they want. But much like you were talking about with Ohio State handling their business off the Grambling win, you just don't. These games aren't played on paper, right? They're not simulated video games. And there's a world where Western Michigan sort of hangs around and mucks it up a little bit. I just don't think the spread is high enough for me to take the bait and get involved with the Broncos. It's Illini or pass for me. And I was on the under in their opening game. Maybe I should be on the under again here at 50.5. The difference is that opening week was 63.5. Obviously a more formidable opponent, so maybe it won't be just punts all day from their opponent, and they might get to midfield and punt, and that's when you're really looking good when these unders that you almost want a better team because they're not going to take it all the way and score. They're going to do enough to bleed clock in the punt. So I could see the under here, but there's a world where like the Illini are catapulted or rejuvenated from that big win and want to ride the momentum. I just think IU on deck in Bloomington. So I'm going to probably lean under here. I don't think I'm quite ready to pull the trigger.
Yep, I think I am right in line with you. Once again, under would be my lean. I don't really want to touch the spread because, listen, I am one of the biggest believers in Illinois football. I think they're fantastic. I think if this game was just, say, a bowl game or something and they wanted to,
Right.
I would think they destroy Western Michigan, a team I don't think all that much of. The thing for me, this early season has played out nearly identically script-wise to Illinois last season. If you remember, they opened week one with just a dominant performance against an Eastern Illinois team, very similar to what they did in week one this year. Followed that up with a performance where they were around a field goal favorite and beat a quarterback everyone loved with Jalen Daniels in Kansas. They just got that win against Mensa and Duke. And then in their final little trappy game where they were at home against a MAC opponent before Big Ten play, they beat Central Michigan 30-9 and kind of just wanted to get out of there in one piece and be prepared for Big Ten play. I think that's what we're going to see Bielema approach this game as. It's a scary number for me. I don't like anything about Western Michigan enough to add them to cover a spread against a team I do really like to my card. But, I think Illinois is not going to necessarily be motivated to hang points in this game. So lean the under, lean Western Michigan if I had to. But once again, nothing that I'm feeling overly strong about here. All right, that's it for our game previews on episode 1 of the 10 this week. Before we get out of here, give me your strongest play for week 3 as we sit right now.
It's as we sit right now. I'm just looking down here, going through it all. That is a tough one. I didn't love anything. I feel bad. I'm gonna have to chew on it a few more days. I know we're back on the show on Friday. I don't want to be a cop out, Greg. I just maybe one of these totals. That's what I'm eyeing. I just don't know which. I think the Oregon Northwestern under. I think I'll go with that one for now.
You beat me to the punch, and I think to your point, the odds makers got good. Didn't they? There's not a ton of early value this week that I'm seeing. We're kind of getting creative on a couple of these plays. And yeah, for me, it's Oregon Northwestern. That's the one I absolutely am getting out in front of betting right now. I would advise people to bet it as well. To me, that's one that has the data to back it up and all of the reasons on paper that Oregon should be leaning to a lower scoring game this week than normal. So lock that in as my best bet. Sounds like Doug is with me. And we'll have more for you. We'll finalize our full cards before our Friday episode of the 10th. So stay tuned. We'll be back live 4 p.m. Eastern on the Bet Rivers Network for our final Week 3 Best Bets show. Reminder, go take advantage of our Bet Rivers Football Squares and the weekly Profit Boost Pack that's available to you in the Bet Rivers app or betrivers.com. For Doug, for all our producers behind the scenes, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on Friday.